They brought a predator to class. Then, the human Deathworlder left aliens speechless, reached its stunning climax, when Samantha defied expectations. Instead of showcasing an Earth predator, she presented Ara's Nilbin, demonstrating identical evolutionary adaptations across different worlds. As the lecture hall fell silent, she challenged their fear-based classifications, proving that understanding predators, including humans, requires moving beyond fear to recognize their ecological context. Her approach transformed perceptions instantly. The transport ship emerged from the jump point with a gentle shudder, revealing the magnificent triple moon system of Centauri Prime. Samantha Green pressed her face against the viewport, drinking in the sight of the purple-blue vegetation carpeting the planet's surface. Unlike the familiar greens and browns of Earth, this world seemed to shimmer with an almost ethereal quality beneath its three moons. "First time in the Centauri system?" asked the reptilian attendant, his scaled brow ridges lifting in what Samantha had learned was their equivalent of a smile. "First time off Earth," she replied, unable to tear her gaze away from the approaching world. Centauri Prime, home to the prestigious Interstellar Biological Academy. And now, her home for the next 3 academic cycles. The attendant's scales rippled in what she recognized as surprise. "Earth? The Class 12 Deathworld?" His voice dropped to a whisper. "I didn't think they allowed your kind in the Academy program." Samantha's excitement dimmed slightly. She'd encountered this reaction throughout her journey. The whispers, the sidelong glances, the subtle shifting away when she entered a room. Earth's classification as a Class 12 Deathworld had preceded her everywhere. "Special exchange program," she said, forcing brightness into her voice. "First human accepted." The attendant nodded, but she noticed how he increased his distance as he continued down the aisle. Samantha sighed. She'd known this wouldn't be easy, but she'd hoped the actual scientific community would be more open-minded than the general galactic population. As the ship docked at the spaceport, Samantha gathered her modest belongings. At 5'9", with an athletic build, she was considered quite average on Earth. But among the diverse species of the Galactic Federation, she knew her appearance alone marked her as different. Her brown skin and curly black hair were unremarkable by human standards. But the density of her muscles, even her seemingly slender frame, betrayed her origins from a high-gravity world with environmental pressures that produced what other species called evolutionary predators. She followed the yellow guidance path through the bustling spaceport, consciously slowing her naturally brisk pace. The orientation materials had warned that rapid movements could trigger alarm responses in several sentient species. The last thing she wanted on her first day was to cause a panic simply by walking too quickly. The guidance path led her to a sleek hover shuttle emblazoned with the Academy's emblem, a spiral of DNA that incorporated genetic markers from a dozen different worlds. Inside, 3 other new students were already seated. Samantha recognized their species from her preparatory materials. A crystalline Volnian, whose body refracted light in dazzling patterns. A blue-skinned amphibious Catoni, with gills that fluttered nervously. And a small, furred creature with enormous eyes that Samantha identified as an Aurelian. "Permission to enter?" Samantha asked from the doorway, following protocol for mixed-species encounters. The 3 aliens startled at her voice. The Aurelian's fur stood on end, and the Catoni's gills flared wide before clamping shut. "You're human?" the Volnian asked, its crystalline voice tinkling like wind chimes. "Yes, Samantha Green, Earth." She remained in the doorway, giving them space to process. After an uncomfortable silence, the Volnian's crystals shifted into what Samantha hoped was a welcoming configuration. "I am Vaughn. Please join us." Samantha nodded gratefully and took the seat farthest from the others, noticing how the Aurelian's large eyes never left her, tracking every movement. The shuttle hummed to life and lifted smoothly from the platform. Through the windows, Samantha watched as they soared over sprawling gardens and elegant structures that seemed to grow organically from the landscape rather than being built upon it. The Academy campus was even more beautiful than the virtual tours had suggested. "First learning cycle?" the Katoni asked suddenly, breaking the tense silence. "Yes," Samantha replied, grateful for the overture. "I'm specializing in comparative xenobiology." "Me too," the Katoni exclaimed, their voice bubbling with excitement before they seemed to remember their company and subdued themselves. "I'm Kato, third-generation academic." "Pleasure to meet you, Kato," Samantha said, careful to modulate her voice to the softer register, recommended for interacting with auditorily sensitive species. The Aurelian finally spoke, their voice surprisingly deep for such a small frame. "I am Ara. We will be roommates." The statement held no warmth, merely resignation. Samantha's heart sank. She'd hoped her assigned roommate might be more open-minded. "I'll do my best to be considerate of your needs and customs," she offered. Ara nodded stiffly, their huge eyes blinking rapidly in what Samantha recognized as their species' way of processing stress. The shuttle docked at the residential quadrant, and a holographic guide materialized to escort them to their quarters. Samantha and Ara were directed to a dwelling unit designed for dual occupancy, with separate sleeping alcoves branching off a shared living space. Ara immediately disappeared into one of the alcoves, the privacy barrier humming into place behind them. Samantha stood alone in the living area, her excitement about arriving at the academy tempered by the reality of her reception. She unpacked her few possessions, setting a small hologram of her family on a shelf and placing her mother's hand-woven blanket on her sleeping platform. The gravity on Centauri Prime was approximately 0.8 that of Earth, making her feel slightly buoyant with each step. She would need to adjust to prevent accidental leaps or overly forceful movements. That evening, the Academy's central gathering hall hosted a welcome ceremony for new students. Samantha arrived early, choosing a seat near the back, where her presence would be less disruptive. She watched as the hall filled with beings from across the galaxy, some floating, some slithering, some moving in ways she had no words to describe. The Academy's chancellor, a towering Arcturian with iridescent tendrils that waved gently around their central mass, took the center stage. "Welcome, seekers of knowledge, to the 342nd learning cycle of the Interstellar Biological Academy." The chancellor's voice resonated without seeming to come from any particular location. "You represent the finest scientific minds from 57 worlds across our galactic community. Here, you will expand not only your understanding of universal biological principles, but also your capacity for cross-species collaboration." Samantha felt a surge of hope at these words, but it faded as the chancellor continued. "This cycle marks a historic expansion of our exchange program to include a representative from Earth, a Class 12 Deathworld, under special containment protocols." A murmur rippled through the assembly, and hundreds of alien eyes turned to stare at Samantha. She forced herself to sit perfectly still, fighting the urge to shrink down in her seat. "Student Green's participation will be monitored by our Xenohazard Safety Committee, with appropriate restrictions to ensure community well-being," the Chancellor added, as if announcing a reasonable precaution rather than publicly marking her as dangerous. Samantha kept her expression neutral, though inside she seethed. She had undergone months of rigorous medical screenings, psychological evaluations, and behavioral conditioning to prove she posed no threat. Yet, here she was, being introduced as a potential hazard rather than a fellow student. As the ceremony concluded, Samantha rose to leave, noticing how others gave her a wide berth. She had just reached the exit when a tall, spindly figure stepped into her path. "Terran student," the alien addressed her, 8 eyes, blinking in sequence around a central sensory cluster. I am Professor Zixal, primary instructor of evolutionary predator studies. Samantha straightened her posture, determined to make a good impression, despite the introduction she'd just endured. Professor Zixal, it's an honor to meet you. I've read your work on convergent hunting adaptations across unrelated species. Zixal's sensory appendages twitched. Indeed. Your presence here presents a unique opportunity for our department. Report to Laboratory Complex 7 tomorrow at first light. Your academic orientation will begin there, rather than with the general population. Before Samantha could respond, Zixal continued. The laboratory has been specially prepared to accommodate a Class 12 specimen. Do not deviate from the yellow guidance path. With that, Zixal moved away, leaving Samantha standing alone. Specimen, not student, specimen. Samantha's fists clenched involuntarily, and she immediately forced them to relax when she noticed a nearby group of students backing away in alarm. With deliberate calm, she walked out of the hall and back to her quarters, where she found Era huddled in the common area, looking distressed. "Is something wrong?" Samantha asked, keeping her distance. Ara's fur rippled anxiously. "I did not realize. A Deathworlder. They should have warned me." Samantha felt a flash of anger, but pushed it down. "I understand this is uncomfortable for you. If you'd prefer a different roommate arrangement, I won't take offense." Ara's enormous eyes blinked rapidly. No. The Chancellor spoke of learning from diversity. I must adapt." They didn't sound convinced. "For what it's worth," Samantha said softly, "I'm just as nervous about being here as you are about me being here, on Earth. I'm nothing special, just an ordinary biology student who loves learning about different ecosystems." Ara's ears twitched forward slightly. "Your world. Is it truly as dangerous as they say? Constant predators and environmental hazards?" Samantha couldn't help but smile. "From my perspective, it's just home. Yes, we have earthquakes, storms, and animals that can be dangerous. But most humans go their whole lives without direct confrontation with a predator bigger than an insect." "Yet you evolved as pursuit predators," Ara said, their voice hushed. "With forward-facing eyes and endurance hunting capabilities." "True. But those adaptations serve us differently now. We use our endurance for sports and our problem-solving for science." Samantha gestured to the academy around them. "That's why I'm here, to study, not to hunt." Ara seemed to consider this, their fur settling slightly. "I have a nilbin," they said abruptly. "A what?" "A nilbin, a small predatory companion animal from my homeworld. Many Aurelians keep them to control pests. Would you like to see it sometime?" Samantha recognized the olive branch being extended. "I'd like that very much." That night, as Centauri Prime's 3 moons cast their multicolored light through her window, Samantha recorded a message for her family back on Earth. "Day 1 complete." She spoke softly into her communicator. "It's going to be harder than I thought. They're not just cautious. They're genuinely afraid of me, of what I represent." She paused, watching the dance of the triple moonlight. "But I didn't come here to be comfortable. I came to build bridges, one conversation at a time, if that's what it takes." The next morning, Samantha followed the yellow guidance path to Laboratory Complex 7, her stomach nodding with apprehension. Unlike the organic, flowing architecture of the rest of the campus, this building was stark and utilitarian, with obvious containment features built into its design. Inside, she found not a typical classroom, but what appeared to be a modified research containment facility. A dozen transparent barriers separated a central presentation area from tiered observation seating. Professor Zixal stood in the center, along with several other faculty members, and about 20 students of various species. "Ah, the Terran specimen has arrived," Zixal announced as Samantha entered. Please proceed to the central area. Samantha hesitated, looking at the other students seated safely behind barriers. Am I not joining the class? You misunderstand, Zixal said, multiple eyes blinking in what Samantha was beginning to recognize as impatience. You are not here to observe. You are here to be observed. Earth is classified as a Class 12 Deathworld, and you, as its indigenous apex predator, are our subject of study this cycle. Shock and humiliation washed over Samantha. I was accepted as a student, not a research subject, she protested, trying to keep her voice level despite her rising anger. One of the other professors, a gelatinous being whose features constantly rearranged themselves, oozed forward. Student Green, your admission letter clearly stated your participation in specialized research protocols. This is the Evolutionary Predator Studies Department. After all, Samantha took a deep breath. She had indeed agreed to participate in research, but she'd understood that to mean collaborative work, not being treated as a specimen. Still, causing a scene on her first day would only reinforce their perceptions of humans as volatile and dangerous. I see, she said finally. What exactly does this entail? Zixal seemed pleased by her compliance. For today, merely biometric baselines and observational notes. In 3 cycles, each student in this cohort will present an apex predator specimen from their homeworld for comparative analysis. As Earth's representative, you yourself serve as both student and specimen. The unfairness of it stung, but Samantha nodded stiffly. I understand. The session that followed was among the most uncomfortable experiences of Samantha's life. She was measured, scanned, questioned about her diet, sleep patterns, and physical capabilities. The other students took notes, occasionally whispering among themselves. Some seemed fascinated, others clearly frightened. None approached her directly. When at last she was dismissed, Samantha fled to the Academy's vast botanical gardens, seeking solitude among the alien flora. She found a secluded spot beneath a tree with sweeping blue-purple leaves, and finally allowed herself to feel the full weight of her disappointment. Rough first day? Samantha startled at the voice, looking up to see Kato, the Katoni student from the shuttle. Sorry, Kato bubbled, their gills fluttering apologetically. Didn't mean to startle a pred. Startle you. Despite everything, Samantha found herself smiling at the awkward correction. It's okay. And yes, not exactly the academic experience I was hoping for. Kato settled onto a nearby stone, their amphibious skin glistening in the dappled light. I heard about Professor Zixal's class. That seems ethically questionable. Thank you, Samantha said, genuinely touched that someone else saw the problem. I knew there would be curiosity about humans, but I didn't expect to be treated like a zoo exhibit. The professor has strong views about predator species, Kato said carefully. Even those of us from moderate-class worlds feel it sometimes. But what happened today crossed a line. They sat in companionable silence for a moment, before Kato spoke again. So, for the predator presentation assignment, what will you do? Samantha sighed. I honestly don't know. I couldn't exactly bring an Earth predator with me, and I doubt the Academy would approve an import request for a tiger or wolf. You could present data on Earth predators without a live specimen, Kato suggested. Most students from higher-class worlds use holographic representations anyway. Bringing actual apex predators into a classroom would be insane. A thought began to form in Samantha's mind. What about you? What are you presenting? A venom analysis of the blade-fin swimmers from my homeworld's southern oceans, Kato said. They're only mid-tier predators, but their neurotoxin delivery system is unique. Samantha nodded, her plan crystallizing. Kato, would you introduce me to Vaughn, the Volnian from our shuttle? Sure, but why? I need to understand more about how different species perceive predator adaptations, Samantha said. and I think I just figured out how to approach this assignment. Over the next several days, Samantha divided her time between her regular classes, where she was thankfully treated more like a normal student, and her secret project. She met with Vaughn, whose crystalline perspective on biological adaptations proved invaluable. As a silicon-based life form, Vaughn experienced the world through vibration and light refraction rather than conventional senses, offering Samantha insights she would never have considered. More surprisingly, her relationship with Ara began to thaw. After their initial conversation, Ara had cautiously introduced Samantha to their Nilbin, a small, six-legged creature with iridescent fur and retractable claws that resembled a cross between a cat and a ferret. "May I observe it hunting?" Samantha asked one evening, after watching the Nilbin perform acrobatic leaps around their common area. Ara hesitated. "You want to watch it kill?" "I want to document its predatory behaviors," Samantha clarified. "For comparative research." Still skeptical, Ara nevertheless agreed. They set up a controlled environment in their quarters with several native Centauri insects as prey. Samantha recorded the Nilbin's hunting sequence, the focused attention, the silent stalking, the perfectly timed pounce, and the precise killing bite. "Fascinating," she murmured, reviewing the footage. "The movement patterns are remarkably similar to Earth felines, despite completely different evolutionary paths." Ara watched her with growing curiosity. "You study it with such detachment. I thought humans took pleasure in hunting." "Some do," Samantha admitted. "But I'm a scientist first. I find the evolutionary adaptations fascinating, not the killing itself." This seemed to reassure Ara, who gradually became more comfortable in Samantha's presence. They even began accompanying her to the dining hall, where previously Samantha had eaten alone. It was during one such meal that Professor Zixal approached their table, multiple eyes fixing on Samantha with obvious disapproval. "Terran specimen, you have been neglecting your monitoring sessions," Zixal said without preamble. Samantha set down her fork carefully. "I've attended every required session, Professor. The additional observational periods were presented as optional. For a Class 12 species, safety protocols are not optional," Zixal insisted. "Your presence here is conditional on full compliance." Samantha felt Ara tensing beside her, but kept her own voice steady. "With respect, Professor, I am a student of this academy, not a research animal. I've complied with all official requirements and will continue to do so. But I will not submit to additional scrutiny that other students are not subject to without proper academic justification." Zixal's sensory appendages quivered with what Samantha had learned to recognize as agitation. "Your presentation is scheduled for next week. I expect a comprehensive analysis of Terran predatory adaptations from a species that hasn't yet evolved beyond its hunter origins." After Zixal departed, Ara looked at Samantha with new respect. "That was brave." Samantha shrugged, though her heart was pounding. "Not brave, necessary. If I let them treat me as less than equal from the start, nothing will ever change." "What will you do for your presentation?" Ara asked. Samantha smiled. "Something unexpected." The day of the Predator presentations arrived. Laboratory Complex 7 had been transformed into a high-security containment area, with energy barriers surrounding the central presentation platform and emergency protocols visibly on standby. Each student would have 20 minutes to present their apex predator and analysis. Samantha watched as her classmates presented their specimens. Most used holographic projections or biological samples, though a few brought actual creatures, small ones, safely contained in specialized chambers with triple redundant security measures. Vaughn's presentation on crystalline entities that consumed energy frequencies impressed the faculty with its unique perspective on non-organic predation. Cato's analysis of neurotoxin delivery systems was meticulously detailed, earning approving nods from even the stern Professor Zixal. Finally, it was Samantha's turn. Terra, Samantha Green, Zixal announced, emphasizing her world of origin over her name. Samantha stepped onto the platform, aware of the energy barriers humming to life around her. She carried a small containment unit, similar to those used by other students. The class stirred with nervous anticipation. "For my presentation on apex predators," Samantha began, her voice clear and confident. "I will be examining the evolutionary adaptations that enable efficient hunting across different planetary environments." She activated her display, showing a split screen of genetic sequences. "What you see here are two different predator species that evolved on completely separate worlds, yet developed remarkably similar hunting adaptations." With deliberate movements, she opened the containment unit and gently removed a small creature, Era's Nilbin, which they had agreed to loan her for this presentation. A murmur of confusion rippled through the audience. This wasn't an Earth predator. "The Nilbin of Centauri Prime," Samantha continued, allowing the creature to perch comfortably on her arm. "Possesses forward-facing eyes for precise depth perception, retractable claws for silent movement and sudden attack, and specialized canine teeth for delivering killing bites." She advanced her display, showing comparative anatomy diagrams. These exact same adaptations evolved independently in Earth's feline species, despite our worlds having no evolutionary connection. The Nilbin, apparently comfortable with Samantha after their many observation sessions, began to purr, a sound remarkably similar to that of an Earth cat. "What's most interesting," Samantha continued, "is not the differences between our world's predators, but the similarities. Convergent evolution has led to nearly identical solutions for the same biological challenges across the galaxy." She advanced to her next slide, showing a human dentition chart alongside that of the Nilbin. Even humans, while omnivorous, share some of these adaptations: canine teeth, forward-facing eyes, and problem-solving intelligence that evolved partly as a hunting advantage. The lecture hall had fallen completely silent. Even Professor Zixal's sensory appendages were perfectly still, focused entirely on her presentation. "But what truly defines an apex predator," Samantha said, her voice softening, "is not its capability for violence, but its ecological role. On Earth, our most successful predators are those that hunt selectively, maintain population balances, and ultimately contribute to ecosystem stability. The same is true here on Centauri Prime, and likely throughout the galaxy." She gently returned the Nilbin to its containment unit. Classification systems that categorize entire planets as deathworlds, based solely on predator presence, miss this fundamental biological truth. Predation is not inherently destructive. It is an essential component of balanced ecosystems. Samantha looked directly at Professor Zixal. "I submit that understanding predators, including humans, requires moving beyond fear to recognize our evolutionary context and our potential for cooperation, rather than just competition." She stepped back from the presentation console. "Thank you." The silence that followed seemed to stretch for eternity. Then, from the back of the room, someone began to applaud. It was Vaughn, crystal appendages creating a tinkling sound as they struck together. Kato joined in, followed by Era, and soon, much of the class was demonstrating their species' various forms of approval. Professor Zixal's multiple eyes blinked in rapid succession. "Student Green," they said finally, using her name properly for the first time. "Your approach was unexpected, but you have fulfilled the assignment parameters." With that grudging acknowledgement, they called the next presenter. As Samantha returned to her seat, she noticed the energy barriers had been deactivated. A small victory, but a meaningful one. After class, students who had previously avoided her approached with questions, not about human aggression or danger, but about Earth ecosystems, human adaptations, and cultural practices. "Is it true humans can run for days without stopping?" asked a serpentine student with gleaming scales. Some trained individuals can... Yes, Samantha explained. It's called persistence hunting, following prey until it collapses from exhaustion. And you lose water through your skin as a cooling mechanism, inquired another, sounding both disgusted and fascinated. We call it sweating, Samantha said with a laugh. It's very efficient, though admittedly a bit messy. Do humans keep predators as companions? Like Era's Nilbin? Asked a floating gas cluster being. Many of us do. Cats and dogs, both descended from predator species, are our most common companion animals. The questions continued as they moved from the laboratory to the dining hall, with more students joining the impromptu discussion, for the first time since arriving at the academy. Samantha felt like a peer rather than a specimen. That evening, she returned to her quarters to find Era waiting with their Nilbin, which immediately bounded over to greet Samantha with a chirping purr. It likes you, Aura said, sounding surprised. Nilbins are usually wary of strangers. Maybe it recognizes a fellow predator, Samantha suggested with a wry smile. Aura's fur rippled in what Samantha now recognized as their version of laughter. Perhaps your presentation today was illuminating. Thank you for trusting me with your Nilbin. I couldn't have done it without your help. Aura's enormous eyes regarded her thoughtfully. You changed minds today. Not everyone's, but some, including mine. Before Samantha could respond, her communication panel chimed with an incoming message. It was from the Academy Chancellor's office, requesting her presence the following morning. That could be good or very bad, Samantha murmured. Aura's ears twitched forward. You challenge the established order. There are always consequences for that, but not always negative ones. The next morning, Samantha presented herself at the Chancellor's office, her stomach tight with nervous anticipation. To her surprise, she found not just the Chancellor, but a full gathering of the Academy's Administrative Council waiting for her. Student Green, the Chancellor's resonant voice filled the chamber. Your presentation yesterday has provoked considerable discussion among our faculty. Samantha stood tall, prepared to defend her actions. I meant no disrespect to Professor Zixal or the Academy traditions. I simply wanted to present a more complete scientific perspective. Indeed. The Chancellor's iridescent tendrils waved gently. And in doing so, you have highlighted a significant blind spot in our approach to interspecies education. This was not the reprimand Samantha had been expecting. Sir, the Interstellar Biological Academy prides itself on leading scientific thought across the Federation. Yet your experience here reveals we have allowed classification systems to override direct observation and empirical evidence, a fundamental violation of scientific principles. One of the council members, a bioluminescent entity that hovered above their seat, glowed brighter as they spoke. Your innovative approach to the assignment demonstrated not only scientific rigor, but also diplomatic skill. These are precisely the qualities our exchange program was designed to nurture. The Chancellor's tendrils formed a pattern that Samantha recognized as formal approval. We would like to expand our Earth Exchange initiative based on your successful integration. 10 Centauri students to Earth, and 10 more Earth students here, beginning next cycle. Samantha felt a surge of excitement. That would be wonderful, but... She hesitated, thinking of her initial reception. How will you address the safety concerns that seem so prevalent? That, said the Chancellor, is where we hope you will assist us. We would like to offer you a position as Earth Liaison to help develop orientation materials and protocols that balance legitimate safety considerations with respectful scientific inquiry. This would mean postponing your return to Earth for an additional cycle, added another council member. But it would be an invaluable contribution to interstellar scientific cooperation. Samantha thought of her family back on Earth, who had been so proud when she was selected for the exchange program. They would understand the importance of what she was being asked to do. I would be honored to accept, she said. That night, Samantha and Era sat on the balcony of their quarters, watching Centauri Prime's 3 moons rise in spectacular succession. First, the small blue one, then the larger green one, and finally, the massive silver one that bathed the landscape in gentle light. "When I first arrived," Samantha said quietly, "those moons seemed so alien. Now they're becoming familiar." Ara's fur rippled thoughtfully. "When I learned my roommate would be a human, I was terrified. Now I can't imagine sharing space with anyone else." Funny how quickly perceptions can change when we actually interact instead of relying on classifications and assumptions, Samantha mused. The Nilbin had curled up between them, purring contentedly. Ara gently stroked its iridescent fur. "What do you think the Earth students will find most difficult about Centauri Prime?" "The gravity? Probably," Samantha laughed. "I'm still occasionally jumping too high or knocking things over." "And Centauri students on Earth?" "The constant noise, maybe. Or the variety of climates. Or simply being surrounded by dangerous humans all the time." Ara's enormous eyes blinked slowly. "They will learn, as I did, that danger is not inherent in a species, but in how we perceive and interact with each other." Samantha nodded, watching as the 3 moons aligned in a rare configuration that turned the night sky into a spectacular canvas of color. "I think this is just the beginning of the bridge between our worlds." "A bridge built on understanding rather than fear," Ara agreed. Below them, the Academy campus glowed with soft light, students of countless species moving along its paths, predator and prey species alike, united in their pursuit of knowledge. Samantha thought of Professor Zixal, who had grudgingly acknowledged her as Student Green rather than Terran Specimen after her presentation. It was a small step, but meaningful. Change would come gradually, one mind at a time. But here, beneath the triple moons of a world that had initially seemed so foreign, Samantha felt the first true sense of belonging since she'd left Earth. She was no longer just a specimen from a death world. She was a bridge builder, a scientist, and, looking at Ara's now relaxed posture beside her, perhaps even a friend. The Nilbin stretched and chirped, its predatory instincts at rest in the peaceful night. Like Samantha herself, it was more than the sum of its evolutionary adaptations. Understanding that truth, Samantha thought, was perhaps the most important lesson any of them could learn, a lesson not found in any textbook or classification system, but in the simple experience of connection across the seeming gulf of difference.